please sign us in with the musical interlude?
Okay.
Please.
So may this podcast, this is a sweet little chime that I love to use in my healing sessions and ceremonies. And it just bringing in the angelic frequencies and may this sound kind of wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just allow you to exhale a little bit. And may this conversation be deep, soulful medicine for those listening and watching, and just invoking the blessings that this journey really be deeply healing and awakening for us included.
Oh.
Oh.
That, my friends, is my soul sister from all the way from Sedona.
Yes.
In town doing some of her shamanic breath work here in Austin. But what was the instrument?
This one's a chime. There's different types of chimes. This one's a type of a koshi chime. And so all that is doing is just, it kind of feels like angelic frequencies. And I love at the end of ceremonies or at the end of sessions to just kind of bring in this nice little gentle frequency to kind of bring everything home again.
Yeah, and I just experienced that after we did our one-on-one session, which we'll get into later on in the episode. But I love that you picked that as an instrument, because you're the first woman I've had on since I've introduced that practice, and everything else has been with some drums and some beating, and it's very kind of masculine. And so it's very appropriate that that's what you picked.
Yeah.
And
we have all those things too. Just like before, you're recording in a new space now. So yeah, we use the rattle and the drum to kind of clear out density, and it's the right tool at the right time. And then so are like a chime or a harp or a crystal bowl to bring in lighter frequencies when we've released density, to bring in some more light, to bring in a higher vibration. So yeah, I'm honored to be on the show. Cal, I love what you're doing. And, we've known each other for many years, and it's beautiful to see your voice coming forward and holding a platform for sharing the wisdom that you've collected along the way and through the people that you have on the show. So
thank you. And you were certainly one of the early ones that stood beside me and actually behind me at times and gave me a little nudge and said, it's time. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, that part of my process was to continue to collect those, I guess, affirmations and to trust that when the time was right, I was going to be ready. And there were many times as I was getting these kind of affirmations that I questioned myself, why am I not doing something? Yeah. Why am I not moving forward? And what I've learned over time is that I was just being patient. And that self-judgment that came in was some other programming that wasn't my true kind of intuition. And we've talked a ton about that, and we'll probably get into that later on in the episode. But it was a great example and something that I've tried to pass on. I've shared with a lot of my friends who are trying to transition. Patience. Not a masculine trait, would not fall under that category. And just so everyone knows, Anahata is well steeped in the masculine, the feminine, and hopefully we'll get into that later on as well. But it's a practice that was hard. I had to be very intentional about being patient, about saying no to a lot of opportunities. Yeah. Spoken about this before, but it's hard because you're seeing others around you that are doing things and maybe achieving. And it's such the mindset that we're brought up into. And to have the confidence to just sit back and say, no, I'm waiting. And now, in my experience, I've never felt more aligned, more alive, more clear about what I'm supposed to be doing or what my path looks like. Mm-hmm. And so for all of you out there who just aren't sure what the hell you want to do, it's okay.
Yeah.
It took me a long time, but really in that period where I felt like I was being super patient, it was over a year of just waiting. And I know some people maybe don't have the luxury to wait in the sense that maybe I did because I didn't have a job, but find out what your own version of patience looks like and be okay with it. It's your version, not my version.
Right. And when we're making these big transitions, which happen, sometimes we meet the end cycle of a career or the end cycle of a relationship or the end cycle of living in a certain town or a lifestyle habit that has served its purpose. And when we're moving into big life cycle shifts, and we've been used to it being a certain way for 20 years or 30 years or for however long the time period is, that when we start making a full transition into a whole new path, exactly, patience to be like, well, which way am I going next? And is it the right path for me? And this is where here in your beautiful backyard, we were sitting in the backyard just talking, and there's just all of these little acorns dropping on the ground, and they're to be something, but they won't sprout.
I know they were going to be Petunia's lunch.
She's fertilizing them,
Yes, our pig Petunia came by and she had her field day with us. So anyway, that's one of their roles.
The acorn, drops to the ground, but it doesn't know what it's going to be yet. And it has to go into the soil, and it has to wait until the right combination of warmth and water and space for the roots to grow before it can actually start sprouting into what it's going to be. And this is the patience that you're talking about, is the divine timing. And do I have the right support system? Do I have, do I know, can I feel the next couple steps? Because we're not going to grow into a full acorn tree the moment the acorn drops onto the ground. And this is that, like, honoring, let me put the roots down first. Let me get the support. What do I have to let go of or shed that is not supporting who I'm becoming? It might have supported who I've been and where I've been, and the hats and the roles that I called home and me. And now as I reach for something else that feels more authentic, there, along with that patience process, is a whole hell of a lot of shedding of what would block or be in the way of what I'm becoming, which is, instead of a medicine to my little acorn, it can be a poison that's holding me back. And that's where we're stuck in the ground and all of that soil that's above our head. And we've got to be stronger than that. And the density, the addictions, the denial, the limitations, the doubt, the fear, all of those things that, in order to be a big, massive tree, each one of us individually is going to have to overcome. And having the right support system and the right lifestyle, the right diet, all of those things, we may need to be real. We might be thinking nothing's happening, but we actually, just like a tree that's dormant, there's a lot happening on the internal landscape. And we're saying, but there's no fruit happening. There's no branches. There's no trunk even. Like, I'm not doing anything. And a dormant tree is moving resources, rebuilding root systems so that it's nice and strong and stable. It's collecting and holding energy that it will then use to birth when the season and when the timing and when it's ready. Then all of a sudden, we can sprout up very quickly when all of those things are in alignment. And so patience is part of that, along with shedding and releasing and learning how to receive the new kind of nourishment of what we're becoming.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk a little bit about this shedding part and what it looks like. I actually just posted something yesterday on social media. It'll be, 6 weeks ago from when this is released, but I spoke about my career as a trader. And when I left, I certainly had financial means, and I was attached to that type of a lifestyle or just this idea of who I was. And in some ways, I hadn't shed it. And I didn't have that hunger because I had the safety of the financial piece. And it wasn't until I realized that it was no longer serving me that I had to play like I didn't have those resources. And that I really started to move forward. And it's not to say that you damn what that thing you're shedding is. You really, I think we would both agree that you want to bless that and honor it and be grateful for it. And sure, you could say, well, of course you would. It's money. And well, there are other things that maybe aren't serving you that don't look as sexy on paper, but we also need to bless those things. And I'd love for you to talk about that and why we need to bless those things.
Yeah, I think we're in the journey of releasing attachments in as many forms as possible. And that doesn't mean we can't still have a healthy orientation to money and a healthy orientation to play and adventure. And when we step back, we were talking about perspective and awakening to kind of witness. Am I having a healthy orientation to money, or is it driving me? Am I having a healthy orientation to alcohol, or am I leaning on it to sedate and to ignore or oppress some real feelings that are trying to teach me something, trying to show me something? Am I using technologies as a form of distraction to keep me from really moving forward in my life? And so this is an opportunity for us to just have some like radical accountability and a check-in. Like, how am I doing? Does this still serve me? Do I have a healthy orientation to it? And am I outgrowing it? Is it a medicine or a poison? And sometimes a career is an example. We might have loved it when we started it 15, 20 years ago, and we might have been reaching a ceiling where we're now experiencing diminishing returns, where we just don't love it anymore, or it doesn't provide us nourishment or growth, or it's just not stimulating, or we just don't love it anymore. And it can be the same way with alcohol. It can be the same way with a certain group of friends. It's like, is this still nourishing me? Is it still feeding me? And what would it feel like if I stepped back from this a little bit? And does it have control over me? And in that place, if I were to step away from it, if I want to reach for it and the claw's coming out, then I know I'm in an addictive relationship with it. I'm in a codependent relationship with it. And it's not about force, like I have to rip alcohol from my hands or, rip the bong or whatever it is, that I have to quit immediately the job. Or the relationship, whatever it is, we're just like, can I witness the truth about my relationship to it? Does it run me, or am I running it?
And to do that, and we were talking about this before we got on, is just create a little bit of space between you and fill in the blank. And a lot of times we don't, because we're just not conscious of it, and we're doing it with great intentions. But when I think we both experience, when you just create a little, it doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to witness our own being, we see things much differently.
Yeah. Sometimes that's just taking a fast from a thing. And whatever, insert thing here. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's Netflix. Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's cigarettes. Maybe it's pot, whatever, Can I just take a break? Can I step back for a day, for a week, and then see how I'm responding to it, why I reach for it? And that kind of gives us a little bit more empowerment to see where I might be attached in a way that is pulling my energy, where I'm not in charge, where it's running the bus and I'm not. And that might be a limiting belief. What if I didn't do this because of fear of other people's judgments? What if I didn't do this just because I want people to like me? What if I stepped away from this thing and I allowed people to be disappointed with me, or I let my fear rise, and like, what am I really afraid of? Instead of, as soon as something I'm afraid of or I'm comfortable, I run, I hide, I sedate, I ignore, I blame or distract. What if when I'm uncomfortable and some anxiety or discomfort rises, what if I got curious about it? Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of, what is this really about? What is underneath it? So that I can not be allowing it to unconsciously guide my choices from a contracted place. Because the real inspired choices, the authentic choices, are going to come from an expansion, a desire, a wish. I want to move towards this, instead of I want to run away from something. I want to hide from something. And so the choices that we're going to make from that contracted place, we're going to meet more of the same, more contraction, more fear, more pain. And when we make those choices from, I'm just passionate, I'm excited, I'm inspired. And you made this choice from the podcast from that place of an inspirational place. And then it's starting to attract the right audience. It's starting to attract the right guests, and it's starting to bring out the best in you.
Yeah, and you're right. It's the path was clear. It became, how could I not do the podcast? Like, of course I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And what's come out of it is some of these other things that, as I've stayed with as we were talking about the kind of heartbeat or the life force, whatever you want to call it, of the podcast, as I've stayed true to that, I've started to see other things within me that are aligned with what the message is and what my mission is. And it's helped inform what the next track may look like for me. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's taken a lot of pressure off. And I've tried a few things like, that's not it. So I just come back to the podcast, and
that's how we do it. This is actually intuitive living. And in our session, we were kind of talking about this left side of the body, the left wing, which is our feminine side, where intuition and inspiration and flexibility and creativity come from, so that can inspire the right side, our masculine side, of where we take courageous action, where we are honest, where we're discerning, where we're adventurous and explore into new territory. And when we're exploring into new territory, let's be honest, whether it's opening our heart again, after it's been hurt, or whether we're trying a new career and it's just, we feel awkward and uncomfortable and unfamiliar and it's scary, whether we're starting a new chapter of our life, or we're letting go of something we've had an addictive, unhealthy relationship to for a long time, or substance or something like that, and we're moving into whole new territories of being without it. Of course, fear and anxiety are going to come up. And when we have that feminine, like faith and support from that left side of our body, and the courage of the masculine to be like, okay, let's see what's there. We're going to learn, and then we're going to adapt again. We might fall. It might not be what we thought. And so we'll have to adapt. Feminine, get back up again. Masculine, try something, listen. Feminine, adapt and adjust, try it again. Masculine. And we do this dance between the feminine and masculine, where this is how we walk in our journey, when we're not walking as an unconscious robot, defined and driven by other people's agenda for us. When we're actually in our own authentic path, we're learning how to listen to our own intuition and our own emotional intelligence and our own divine guidance, and having the ballsy courage to actually move towards it, and facing the fears of failure, the fears of rejection, and the fears of other people's criticism in the wake of those choices.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point. I speak from my own experience. For so many years, I was that fucking right wing. And I think that probably resonates with a lot of men listening. We, again, doing the best we can, but we just kind of drive through whatever. That's there's no discernment with that piece. It's just one way. And as I've invited more of the intuition back into my life, and the patience and the acceptance and the allowance, and still being able to move forward and adapt and be creative, like these, it's the marriage of the two. And I think that what I want to offer as part of, this particular episode is for men to really just sit back, be okay with where you are right now, because that's where you're at, but recognize, am I always pushing forward? And unfortunately, we're seeing this with a lot of women that are taking on this masculine role, and they're kind of disavowing their feminine nature and saying, well, I have to do this and be that. And you can be both. You can still be feminine and a woman.
It's for all of us, for men and women. The part that you're describing is actually the unhealthy masculine. Force, push, aggression, oppression, ignoring, arrogance, those parts of us that, when we've done that, for men and women, when we've done that at different times, sometimes we got ahead. It got rewarded.
Yes,
we won. We get the most powerful position in the Oval Office. It gets rewarded when there's competition, when there's force, when there's those kinds of qualities. And so we want to acknowledge that sometimes there has been some reinforcement of unhealthy habits. And it's what has created some success in many ways. And so we get to see, where has that had diminishing returns, or what cost have I paid by forcing and pushing and working 70 hours this week? What was the consequence? And now here comes my health having a problem.
Or your relationship with your wife, your kids, your husband.
Or an addiction, or like whatever it is. And so that's where we get to look at the diminishing returns, or the unhealthy masculine. And same with the unhealthy feminine, and I mean this for men and women, that has been drama and victim and passive aggressive and kind of insecure, and kind of that meek that isn't saying, okay, this happened, but how am I going to heal? Which is the healthy feminine.
Yeah, can I own what happened? Can I own my role in it?
Right.
And move forward? And just be clear, like, I've done all of this stuff.
Hello,
so
yeah, like,
we're not saying, we're not pointing fingers here. We're pointing at ourselves. That's what we're talking about. I just want to be very clear.
Yeah.
No soapboxes here.
For sure. Because I've played the victim and been the whiner. I'm sure I'm not done with that totally, you know?
Got a few of those left in the kitty.
A few more of those. And then to evolve that victim, is to move into the feminine, the healthy feminine, and move into forgiveness and compassion. That's to evolve that energy. And then when we go over to the masculine, that is aggression and push and force. And if we evolve that masculine, the unhealthy masculine, to the healthy masculine that says, hey, let's cooperate. Let's create in our leadership rather than destroy. Let's work together rather than I win and you lose. Let's create harmony so that the environment is not paying the price for capitalism. We can still work together where there isn't somebody paying the price. And that's more of the healthy masculine leadership in men and women that we're looking for. Yeah. So that we don't have this victim that's like so angry at the system that isn't and pointing fingers and blame, that is not allowing us to evolve past our mistakes and say, yeah, we made a mistake there. Yeah, that wasn't the best. How can we learn from it? And how can we rise above and create the new paradigm? Because if we're aggressive and we're whining and we're blaming and we're forcing, then we're all part of the old paradigm that's creating destruction and oppression and hurt and pain. We don't need more of that. No. And so this is where we do our inner work, and that's what we were just doing before the show, of just like, okay, where can I do my inner work so that I can be a father that is parenting from the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine, that allows my children the space to make mistakes. I allow them the space for their feelings and their voice. I still provide healthy structure, and I also give space for their wings. And I've watched you evolve, the unhealthy masculine and the oppressed feminine. And I've watched both of those quadrants that are kind of in that lower frequencies. I've watched you evolve and bring more of compassion and understanding and patience and space to your parenting and to your relationship and to yourself. And also the courage to try new things and to lead with cooperation instead of, being the tyrant, and it's my way or the highway. And so I want to acknowledge the parts of you that have been evolving over this, this many years that we've known each other.
Thank you. And I want to, before we get to that, I want to give a proper introduction. and so, again, I've known Anahata for years. I started out, we met at your breathwork session here in Austin.
Yeah, a few years back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I soon came out to experience retreat with you and Parangi and Ashley. And we can get into that later, what that was all about. And then, we've done some individual sessions, which we just did another one before the show, which was amazing. And so I want to just kind of pass it off to you. You give us a little bit of your background, how you got here, and really what your kind of service offering is. Why are you here?
Yeah. I'm a soul cheerleader. I'm out with it. Yeah. I'm in to inspire millions to shine, like we're the light inside. support in the awakening of that, the authentic light. And that helps people through like deep core life shifts, because that might be when we veer from our light, when it's been oppressed, when it's been distorted, when there has been so much pain or programming that it's kind of contracted, or we're pushing our light with a force that isn't really in ethical alignment. And so my role is to support people through that shift of releasing the density and reclaiming the light. And what are the shackles? What are the limiting beliefs? Where has there been energy leaking? Where has there been pain? Where has there been oppression or distortion that we want to kind of tidy up a little bit? And where are some new tools that can help somebody walk with greater alignment? Maybe that's balance. Maybe that is forgiving in the heart. Maybe that is finding their power. Maybe that is learning how to walk with more a spiritual connection. So I kind of sit with each individual of like, where are you at? And then where is the roadmap to bringing you home again to your truth, to your light, to your inner radiance? And how can I support that? Whether that's through coaching or individual sessions or group retreats or whatever it is. There's a shamanic healing podcast. I've made a whole range of different access points for people to get information, tools, resources, healing, transformational empowerment that can help them on their journey. So shamanic healing is based in Sedona because so many people come there to kind of get away from their everyday life and plug in to themselves again, to heal, to hear themselves, to find themselves and their truth again. And so Sedona is really like a mecca for people that are seeking and healing and awakening. And I'm just here to tailor an experience to kind of support people through that process.
Yeah, and I can, like I said, I can attest to that. We've done a lot of work together, and it's been, I want everyone to, this is, I guess, when I started to listen to my intuition again. And as I was on this journey, been on it for 2.5, 3 years, I started to realize that when someone evoked something in me, it wasn't enough to just listen to them on a podcast or read their book. I needed to be in their energy and be in their space. And so whatever that means for you out there, for me, I had the flexibility to travel and do retreats. And so that was my path. And so we spent a lot of time together and we've done a lot of work together, and it's been amazing. And it's helped me as I move forward to kind of find my own path. But to your point, I went to Sedona to get more connected with me. And we'll get into later some of the other things that I've done in Sedona that you've been a part of. But one thing that we were talking about beforehand, and I don't want to miss this today, because parenting is such an important part of my life, and I think the life of a lot of listeners. And I haven't really spoken about it that much on the podcast. And I've spoken about it a ton off the podcast, but I think it would benefit a lot of the moms and dads out there and others who have relationships with their mom and dad, and what this whole thing looks like and the evolution and what it means. It's not just a catchy phrase to say that your kids are your greatest teachers. We just talked about each of my kids and how one taught me the importance of pause, how it's something that has been very important in my life, and I just wasn't recognizing it as fully in his. And another one who was showing me that he was going to be him no matter what. Didn't matter what the girl thought. He wasn't going to change his Instagram to try to lure some cute girl. He said, "Dad, if she doesn't like my Instagram, it's not going to work." I was like, fuck,
So
dude, I'm
smart.
48. I think I'm just starting to understand that. And so at 14, sorry, Bo, but you're getting a shout out here. We were sitting down the other day. I was actually taking a bath and he was hanging out with me, and we were talking about an experience he had. He said, "Yeah, these girls asked for my Instagram." So I gave it to him, and I said, "So, hey, I know what his Instagram's like. It's some gaming and memes, and it's shit that he finds hilarious."
Right.
And it's
Lights him up.
So I said, so what's kind of your Instagram game then? And that's what he says. He says, Dad, like what? If they don't like me on Instagram, they're not going to like the real me. So why would I do anything different? It's like, that's the most fucking logical thing I'd ever heard.
Smart. He knows who he is at that age. And most of us at that age, we're willing to throw ourselves under the bus. And there goes authenticity for the rest of who knows how long until we may or may not be ready to reclaim it again. Yeah. We barter it to fit in. We barter it to be liked. We barter it to, seek the validation and the acceptance of other people. And junior high is the time where that is such pressure to fit in and conform and be liked. And this is so beautiful to hear, is that we want to support our kids, following the beat of their own drum, and like learning to face when they are criticized or judged from somebody else, so that they learn how to do that as adults as well. Because them being them, doing it their way, following their rhythm and their journey, people aren't going to get it sometimes. Like a lot of the time, people aren't going to understand, why are you doing that? Or I wouldn't do that. That's not right, because they're viewing your journey through their little box and their little lens, and it doesn't fit them. And so if we can instill within our kids, if we can instill it within ourselves,
Yes.
to be like, I need to follow what feels right to me, and I don't need to change it to fit in. And if those people don't get me, they're probably not my people. I don't need to be angry at them about it. They're sorting themselves out of my life, because I also want people that see me for me, even though we don't have the same things. We may not have the same things in common, but if we respect our right to be different, we may just get along, even if we don't like the same things. If there's a celebration and a tolerance and an acceptance for celebrating diversity rather than imposing conformity, we can get somewhere. We can learn from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, we were talking about it earlier, the shift. I think the greatest reason for my shift in my parenting, and it's actually been in my life in general, but I've just seen it recently in my parenting in a way that I never knew that I could have a relationship like this with each of my kids. Yeah. It's at a depth that I wasn't forcing it anymore. To your point, I kind of fixed my shit, and I welcomed in that feminine idea of acceptance.
Yeah.
And I have spoken about letting the kids be themselves, their own souls, but I hadn't quite tipped over into embodying that. And I think what's happened in the past 6 months or so is I've really accepted each of them and allowed them to be whoever they are, and to allow them to be seen as their individual souls, with their fears, in their curiosity, in their quirks. And the things like Hope, as an example, talk about a teacher. She doesn't like it when it's 80 degrees and sunny here. She likes it when it's cold and rainy. She's the one who, her intuitive nature is so deep. And we were talking about this, and you've seen it, that it's a reminder, oh, yeah, that's my greatest asset, is my intuition. Get out of the head, right. Get into that gut.
For men and women. And yet we're told as we grow and as we mature, and even as little kids, to not trust the intuition, and we have it as kids. We know if like Uncle Joey's a little creepy and we don't want to go sit on his lap, and yet we're told by the adults, go sit on his lap. And it's just like, oh, we're actually trained not to listen to our intuition. And we actually want to do that as parents. And we want to do that as adults, to be able to say, hey, my intuition, my sensing, my gut will tell me whether or not to go into business with this business partner. It will tell me whether or not this relationship is whether it's right time to take this relationship to the next level. My intuition will tell me whether it's safe to get into that car or not, whether we're a child, whether we're a teenager, whether we're an adult. The intuitive gut instincts, higher self, whatever you want to call it, intuition, that's the sensing part of our being. Men, women, all ages, we actually all have it. It's just been programmed to be oppressed, rather than, as parents, If we understand the value of intuition and sensitivity, then we can say, yes, daughter, son, partner, trust your intuition. What does it feel? Whether they're making a decision about college or whether to continue on with a sport or whether to have this major or date this person or quit this job later in life, that we give them the freedom instead of to give them the answer and to shove our agenda and feel like we know all the answers, because that's more about my ego than about giving them the space to find their own identity and their own path. And instead of giving the answers, which is back to force again, well, I want you to succeed. So basically, let me help you cheat.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to go to college. You have to do this.
Right. To give them the answer doesn't allow, I have twins, which and I watched, one was kind of excelling at math a little bit more, just kind of a little bit more naturally. So I watched the other one lean on the one that kind of felt more comfortable with math. And I let it happen and I watched it happen. And so one's kind of doing the other's homework. And I go, I'm just going to let this play out so that when the test comes, we can see what the test scores are. And of course, we've got an A and a C minus. And so I just let this lesson play out instead of saying, don't give them the answer. Like, here's what happens, even though we care as parents, or even if it's with a partner or with a parent or with a colleague or a friend or whatever, even if we know the answer, and we can see it from the sidelines of their life, and we don't want them to trip over the thing, and we don't want them to be in pain. And it just feels a lot better for us, our ego, and since we don't want them into pain, to reach over and give them the answer. But then they keep getting a C minus in life. And if we keep giving the answer, the C minus becomes a D and an F, and they don't know how to find the answers in life, and they start failing at life. And we're like, what's wrong with you? And you're like, well, maybe I enabled you a lot. And so in watching them play that out, I said, as much as you care and want to give your sibling, your twin, who you just adore, the answers, and who is going to throw a little tantrum if you don't give them the answer, that you're really not helping them. And it doesn't give them the space to practice their homework and practice the tests and get better at it. And although it made them feel good because they were rescuing, it also created such a disparity that those of us that have the answer about a thing, it doesn't give space for the others to find the answers. And you know what? Our kids can find the answers. And our ego and our love and our fear that doesn't want them to suffer. And I've done this with my parents too. Oh, well, I have the answer. Yeah, but I don't want your answer. Most of the time, the unsolicited advice means that your medicine is not going to fit me, or I don't want it. So it lands on fallow ground, and all it creates is judgment and distance between us. And so whether this is in your parenting or whether it's in your partnership, when you're watching your partner trip over something, or a parent or a colleague or a friend or a loved one, like, can we learn this posture? Not pulling our love back, but pulling our judgments, our rescuing, our control, our fix it, and our smother, our rescuer. And that it doesn't mean we don't care, but can we pull that back a little bit and just give them some space to feel the consequences of the classroom they're in, that their soul has attracted for them, to practice finding the answers in their own way. And as parents and as a really good pouncer, rescuer, fixer, like all of that, I've had to reel that back a lot, not only in my parenting, but in my partnership and in my being a daughter, a sibling, just being a human. I realized, wow, that's kind of squashing a lot. The other person is not giving them the space.
Yeah, and it does. I think it doesn't allow them to have their own experience with it. And I think everyone listening would probably agree that you learn the most from your own direct experience. And I think,
for better, for worse.
Yeah. And one thing I did want to note, that if you take anything away from this and you're a parent, the thing that we spoke about earlier, like if your kid doesn't want to hug someone, sit on someone's lap, be in their energy, whatever. Just listen to them. Just fuck social graces or whatever.
Yeah.
Your kid knows.
100%.
Trust them. And by acknowledging that and listening to them, you're going to continue to foster this idea that their intuition is their greatest guide. And if you do the opposite and you run counter to that and put your own shit on that because of this doesn't look right and I don't want to be rude, you will kind of fuck them up.
Well, they get to learn that as well. Like if they're making decisions to please parents, as many are, then they'll get to learn diminishing returns of that at 32 when they don't know how to make a decision for themselves. And I just had this with a couple that I'm working with where the woman in the relationship is still so deeply bound by the expectations of mommy and daddy that she's still checking in with every choice. And she's not actually to be able to be a woman making her own choices in her adult life because that's been so deeply entrenched in her that I have to please mom and dad. And so that's the cost that our children will pay until they are ready to release that. And so that might be in their 30s. It might be in their 20s. I have clients that are in their 50s still like, oh, I don't think my mom's going to like that. I'm like, you're a 52-year-old man. No wonder you can't hold a healthy, conscious relationship because you're actually having one with your mommy.
Yeah.
And there isn't space to be in a relationship with a woman because you haven't actually individuated yet. And so as parents, we actually want our children to individuate. And I've seen so many times but if my identity is deeply woven into being mother or father, well, then I don't want my child to individuate.
Listen up to that.
And so when my kids were, wanting to go off to college, I'm like, go, fly, enjoy. And I had to grieve, okay, things are changing, but I also I'm here to steward individuals that have wings. I don't want mini me's that hide under my wings and don't ever become whole and like learn and fly and have their own wings and their own lives. And so a lot of times we're learning as parents to unenmesh our identity. And we see this a lot with empty nest syndrome where, well, if they leave, then who am I? If they leave, what do I do? And I've watched a lot of parents when it comes time for their kids to want to individuate or start expressing themselves, especially in junior high. Hey, look, I don't want to do the horses. I like, that's not my jam anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I
want to play basketball or hockey, those things that dad played.
Yeah. You're like, but I'm vested in you, and
I spent all this time. I drove you around to all those practices and
like soccer camp, and like
spent all this money.
You're like, okay, like now we've got our dreams placed solely on our kids' shoulders of all of of what we're expecting them to be, and it's like, whoa, back that shit up, because it doesn't allow them the space. Because you said, hey, I'm getting to learn to accept each of my kids, and guess what? They keep changing.
Just like we do, but we need to acknowledge that we change,
by the way. A lot more. They change a lot more. From 12 to 12 and a half is very different. From 14 to 16 is very different. 17 to 19 is very different. 6 to 8 is very different. What they value, what they think is important, how they express themselves, what they like will change. And we also, in the allowing, want to give them space to change. And I've watched so many parents be so attached in the projections of what they're putting on their kids. Okay, next step is soccer. You're going to get a scholarship, which, maybe I don't want to get a scholarship with sports. Maybe after like 11th grade with that sport, like it's not fun anymore. And it's like, well, that's going to take the financial pressure off me if you get a scholarship soccer. Then that's about you and your fears about their next step and financing their next step. Like they're going to figure it out. And if they don't want to go that route, they're going to find another way. And I've watched so many parents come into this place, especially when I was watching Like all of my kids' friends figure out their next step around college about how many parents were literally holding their kids back of like, well, if you leave town, we're not supporting you.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like if you apply at that school, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And there are like literally like, well, we're not going to pay for a car so that they can't get a job in order to get money to
So
leave.
manipulative.
Well, and the thing is that we also get to be in this compassionate space of it's unconscious manipulation because really there is a deep core wound there that is wanting to be filled and has been filled temporarily with the surrogate of our children keeping us company. And we want to be whole and complete without them.
You know what? And that's the key. And I think I can speak from experience there in the sense that I think that I feel so aligned right now. I feel just an inner peace and a joy because I've fixed or I'm working. I acknowledge that wound and that my kids are who they are and they're no longer providing for that temporary relief. And one thing I think is important, and you touched on it, like when your kids leave the home, and I can't speak to it from my own experience yet, you certainly could, but it's okay. Like it's important to grieve that version of you. Like acknowledge it. Don't bypass it and say, oh, it's just a thing. And acknowledge it. That version of you it's time for it to die because you're becoming a new person without them under your roof or whatever your relationship changes. And when we deny that that's happening, we just try to gut through it and don't acknowledge the how sad we are. We're in resistance.
I think the grieving starts. Like I realized that the parenting process is, I'm grieving a little bit along the way.
Yes.
That says, oh, they're not little babies anymore. This phase of whatever that is shifted, that's gone. And I grieve a little bit that is gone. And now I get to be awake and fully present with who they are now.
Yes.
Okay, they're a toddler. That's bringing whole different things. And then I grieve that, okay, now, they're not sleeping. They don't come and sleep next to me at night. Okay, we're grieving that. Now that's over. And, when my son went into Little League, I'm grieving that I can no longer cheer at games. I'm grieving that. He's all, shut that down, Mom. You get to say nothing. You say nothing. You don't say my name. You don't clap. You say nothing. And so I got to grieve that. I want to.
Peyton hasn't gotten that message from Jake yet. He's tried, but she can't help it. God bless her.
I couldn't help it either. But you know what? He wants to be. It was my version of respecting who he's becoming, that he gets. It's about him. It's not about me. Well, I want to cheerlead. Well, Mom, it's not about you. Yeah. It's about how I can support him. Yeah. And so as parents, it's not about you.
But they also, I will say this, okay? Because what they say isn't always what they mean. And I'll give you an example from my own life. I try to make it to all of Jake's games. He plays on the high school basketball team. And so it's all kind of all over Austin. Sometimes it's in Houston. And so I try to make every game. I'll come home a little early from something to go to his game. He's like, Dad, you don't need to come, da-da-da-da-da. He says that to me all the time, but I still show up because I want to be there. I just want to be there. And so at the end of the season, I just wrote him a text and said something to the effect of, I'm just so proud of you. I love watching you play. You're such an incredible teammate. I love the passion you have to being part of that team. Whew.
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
And I just wanted him to know that. And he sent me a text back. He said, I know I don't always say it, but it means a lot to me that you're on my games.
Yeah.
And so there was a time when I wouldn't have come home early from a trip. And I would have taken him at his word, even though I knew deep
back
down, but there was so much layering of that armoring and just not having shit figured out for myself that I wouldn't listen to it. And I'm like, oh, he's good. He told me. It's like, no,
back to that intuition of just the inner knowing. It says, wait, this is the one I need to show up for. Even if it's like, this one's not important, this one's not important, like that one, I just know I need to show up for that. And it's the same thing when my dad was going through his, health challenges. Okay, I know that I don't need to be there this time. And then I knew, okay,
Yep.
ICU, this one, I need to be there. And everybody else is like, oh, you don't need to come. It's like, I need to show up in the ways that I need to show up. And this is back to intuition, whether you're showing up at a business meeting, whether you're showing up for a partner's experience, for your spouse, whether you're showing up for a kid or you're showing up for yourself, back to the intuition of just that listening, and it keeps changing. And so sometimes we don't know because the kids keep changing or our spouse keeps changing how to show up for them. I remember one time with my son, he was just kind of called to go try out for water polo, and he was kind of behind. Other kids had heard that call, or they'd been playing since they were kids. And we went to this water polo tryout, and he just froze. The coach goes, hop in, and my son just froze. Like he just froze. And in that moment, I didn't know, do I go, hey dude, get in? Jump in? Do I kind of get behind him and, give him a little push? Yeah. Or do I be like, hey, what's going on? Do I ask him a question? Or do I sit over there and give him some space? Do I leave him alone? And I think for about 45 minutes, every time he needed me to give space, I stepped on his toes. Every time he needed me to give him a push, I was playing nonchalant, looking away. And we did this zigzag, awkward, totally uncomfortable cha-cha, for about a half an hour. And he just finally was like, let's go. And we got in the car, and he just was so frustrated. And I go, dude, because we were raised in Southern California, so we duded out. This is in Laguna. I go, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to parent you at this age because I've never been here before with you. And I'm guessing wrong a lot. I don't know if you need me to come forward or you need me to back up because I'm not reading it right. No matter how intuitive I am and this is my jam, this is my business, I don't know how to read you right now. And I guess wrong a lot. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, and it doesn't mean I don't care. But I don't know what I'm doing. And it was the first time I totally radically came clean about, you have no manual. I am in the dark. Just because I'm parent on paper does not mean I know how to support you through this next phase of making decisions and whether I should tough love or give you space or give you words of encouragement. And I don't know. And we both just kind of cried and let each other know we cared about each other. It was a really vulnerable part of my parenting to just let him know, I don't have all the answers and you're going to need to help me out here because I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I will say this. Thank you for sharing that, because it reminds me that because you've had, and every kid's different, but because you're a few years ahead of me with the child, they're
22.
Rearing,
they're 22 now.
I came to you fresh off. I was in Sedona with the men's kind of tribe group, and I was fresh off an experience with, Jake was 16 at the time, and I just love this story because there's so much complexity to it. Actually, there's a lot of simplicity too. It's a beautiful story, but Jake had spent $1,300 on Xbox in NBA 2K or whatever. And I think all parents are out there like, how do you spend $1,300 over the course of 5 days on this game? And when it went down, I was looking at a credit card bill, looking for something that I thought I had paid for, and I start seeing 108, 100, charge after charge after charge. And I was like, what the, who? So I tally it up, I get my calculator out, and I go upstairs, and Jake and Bo are both playing video games. One's on the Xbox, one's on PlayStation. I'm like, who's Xbox? And Bo points right at Jake.
Not it. He did it.
And I go, dude, what the fuck? almost $1,400. What were you thinking? How could you spend my money this way? I'm just up one, and he's, Dad, I'm sorry I messed up. And I'm like, you're paying me back for this. Just so I go downstairs. I text my buddies. I got this little group with me, my buddy Regs, Turts, and Greg. I'm like, this is what just happened. First one, it could be a lot worse. He could be into other things. Good point. Okay. Couple other, good kind of chill out. I go into the sauna, I breathe. I come back and I say, buddy, I need to talk to you. I said, you weren't thinking about me when you were doing that. You were just doing it. Okay. I apologize. I shouldn't have yelled at you. What you did, there is accountability. So you are going to pay me back what you spent. But, Dad, I deserve to be yelled at. Well, he thought that he deserved to be yelled at because that is what he's used to. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, at that point, even though that was my initial instinct, like I had enough awareness and I had enough people supporting me to say, it's not that bad. And so I breathed, I took some space, and I came back and I owned my shit. And I said, you did not deserve that. That was me in a fit of rage.
You didn't deserve the anger.
Didn't deserve the anger, exactly.
Let's be clear, like you didn't deserve that response.
That you did not deserve that response. And so anyway, we're kind of figuring out what to do. And I'm on my way to Sedona not long after that. And we're having a conversation. I think it was either before or after our breath work. And you said, but Cal, he doesn't understand the value of money. He's never been taught. And it never really occurred to me. It's like, yeah, he doesn't know. And so I took that medicine and it really just put everything together for me. And so it wasn't his fault, but there is still responsibility and accountability. And so what ended up happening was he had to get a job for the summer. And so we go up to Idaho and we have a grand old time up there, and he plays golf and hangs out with his buddies, but he had to do a shitty job, make after taxes $9 an hour. So every time he pressed that button at $108, he had to work over a day.
Yep. Now we're understanding. And at 14, when we're making this transition, he's not 9. At 14, we're actually quite capable of participating in the tribe's responsibilities. In the tribe, a 14-year-old would be doing some heavy lifting.
Yeah.
A 14-year-old would be responsible for younger siblings. A 14-year-old would be responsible for like some of the things, he can literally lift things. He's capable of doing things, and yet we're still treating him like a 9-year-old. Yeah. And so we actually, as we move, when my son, at 13, he's like, hey, I want to go to Fright Night or whatever. And it was $20. And instead of just pulling the 20 out and giving it to him, I just said, oh. I was like, because 13 is different than 9.
Yes.
And if I want him to be a man, well, then I want to give him the freedom to learn how to take care of himself. And this is what I mean by the parents stepping back a little bit as they grow. We do the same thing they did the year before and not realizing that they keep changing. Every time we get a shoe size change, they get more responsibilities.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we make this point, because we were talking about this before we got on, but it's our generation is used to, when parents step back, they're disengaged.
Yeah,
that's
not what I'm talking about. Exactly.
And so I think the overcorrection has been overparenting, the helicopter, whatever the term is, all in their kids' business. And so there is a sweet spot where you do create more and more space, but you are there and they are held and they are loved and they are supported.
Because they've never had a job before. So how do they get one unless they're guided through it? But we need to give that gap that allows them to decide. I really want the fact that he had a credit card at 14 and didn't have to me, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Like my kids didn't get a credit card until they got their own credit card. Like you don't get access to it until you're learning
So
how
he's
to
fighting an even bigger uphill battle.
Well, we're learning as we all,
Sure.
oh my gosh, all of us have made some really interesting choices as parents, and they're still alive.
I love that you didn't say mistakes, because I think
choices.
That is an important distinction, because I think we often want to say, oh, I fucked up because I did this. No, we made a choice and there was a consequence. And hopefully, if we're paying attention, there's an opportunity for learning.
For everybody.
Yes.
Just like for an opportunity for me in that situation with my son around, the movie, it's like, if I keep doing this, $20 turns into 40, turns into 100, turns into 1,000, and he never learns to have a job, I need to change what I'm doing. And I need to back up a little bit and be uncomfortable when he says, but I want the money. And I said, yeah. And I got to let him be mad at me for a little bit. And we had already had many conversations about 20 different ways in which he could make $20.
Yeah.
Legally, by the way. It's like, hey, you can go clean that person's garage. You can go walk their dog. You can, water their plants. You don't need to go work in a sweatshop, but when you're 13, 14, there are lots of ways that you can make a 20 or a 40 or $100. Like, yeah, you can actually move couches. You can do a whole lot of things. And so I made space for my son to actually build his confidence. He goes, yeah, but their mom and dad are giving them 20. I said, yeah.
So classic. I love it.
I know.
I don't care.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And I know that when I was, in high school, and I really needed a car because I was working through high school and I needed a car, my parents just didn't drop and give me a car, mostly because they didn't have the money. But even if they did, they would have done some kind of matching anyway. And so I got myself a car, and my other peers that got given a car never learned the value of money. And so later in life, they never got a job and they just got married. And then guess what? When they realized that relationship isn't healthy and they're being cheated on, they didn't feel equipped to handle life because their dad or their husband had always given them anything, and they didn't actually know how to stand on their own 2 feet. And I was so grateful for the fact that I had the opportunity to learn how to make my own money and be capable, so that when in life, when I needed to lean on that, I wasn't like, who's going to rescue me?
Yeah.
And that opportunity for my son to just learn how to bridge the gap. He had 2 weeks to figure out how to make $20. He can do that.
Yes.
And he built his confidence. And so for those listening, we're learning to give the kids at every age a little more responsibility. At 2 years old, my kids knew the difference of the different colors. Great, sort the laundry.
Yeah, right.
Reds go over here, and the yellows and the orange, and the blacks and the whites, sort the laundry. Yes, you can do that at 2 years old. You can sort the laundry. And here's a ladder. Put the pile with all the dark ones in that big hole right there. And then, you got to push a button and put the soap in. And now we're going to fold it. And they're going to learn adult things even at 2 years old. I started my kids participating in the adult activities a little bit at a time. They were cutting food for meals. They were part of it. It wasn't separate. And in tribes, the kids are always part of the activities at whatever level that they can deliver, whichever level they're capable of. They start learning how to sharpen arrows. They learn how to gather sticks. And we're quite capable. Our kids are quite capable. We just are saying, no, let me do that for you.
Yeah. Shit, yeah.
And we robbed them of the opportunity to do that. One time with with one of my kids, I won't out them right now, but they just weren't great at doing dishes. And it would drive me crazy when their eggs were still left on the plate. I mean, it just drive me crazy. And I go, you know what? I'm going to get them plates. and let them pick them plates out. They're going to write their name on the back, and that's their plate. Yeah. And they got to wash their plate at the end, and they're going to put it in the dish drainer. And so this one would use no soap, cold water, and not even use the brush. I go, great. There's sticky eggs, like dried onto the plate. I know it's nauseating, isn't it? And then when it goes to lunch, okay, it's lunchtime, grab your plate. And they went to grab the plate and they went to grab for another one. They literally was like, ew, this is gross. And they went to grab for another one. I'm like, no, that's your plate.
Yeah.
Like, but it's dirty. I go, yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it is. They go ahead and say, they're like, but that one's not dirty. I'm like, yeah, someone washed that one. Okay, set the table with your plate.
Yeah.
And it's not a punishment. It's a consequence that fits.
And it's a learning opportunity.
It's a learning opportunity. Otherwise, I'd still be doing their dishes, or they would never know how to do dishes when they're in college. They would never know how to do it themselves. And we're not raising incompetent adults.
Hopefully not.
No, we don't want them sitting on the couch at 35 with bong hits,
No.
just like, dude, what are we having for dinner, Mom? You're like,
Yeah. Well, and what's funny too is just to wrap up the Jake story. There's, like I said, there's more complexity to it because Jake was only able to afford the Xbox because he caddied for me in this big tournament the summer before. So he made, and to be fair, I overpaid him. But he made this money. He went out and bought himself an Xbox. He didn't play it much until that January. And he ran up the bill. And so because he got overpaid caddying, he buys the Xbox, which makes him have to do this super shitty job all summer.
Consequence.
And then when it happened, as I shared with everyone, I was really upset. But what an opportunity it was for me to learn, he doesn't know the value of money. I need to teach him in whatever way. And now he has a job, which honestly, it would have been kind of hard to get him to have a job. Like he was going to put up a fight and I didn't want to be a complete dick about it. And it all worked out beautifully. Right. And he saw like how shitty that job is. And if he wants to make more money, he has to bring some more skills to the table.
Yeah. Or some experience or something. You're actually preparing him for what it is to be a man. Like you'll have to, there's things that you will need. And these are just the extras. Yeah. These are the extra fun. The extra fun thing is the Xbox or the Cabo trip or whatever, the Mexico thing, or, I want a new car, whatever. Those are the extra things. But, we're preparing our young adults to actually learn how to value, okay, I have this much money. Do I need to eat or do I play the video game? Because when my kids went away to college, I was like, you are in charge of the budgeting, all of it. Because I had them budgeting earlier in high school so that they learned how to balance their money. And they're like, well, I really want this thing. I'm like, okay. It's not that I'm just going to up and pay for it, because then they can figure that translates to this many hours working, but I need to also pay for gas. So I'm learning how to take care of my basic responsibilities, the things that I have to pay for. And then I'm learning how to save, or in small bits, get the extras instead of here's $1,500 on the extra, but now I don't have pizza money. I can't eat. And so when they went away to college, I go, you are totally responsible for your budget. They're like, that's a lot of money going to tuition and housing and food. Don't you want to know? And I'm like, no. Here's what's coming in. You are in an accounting class here. Yeah. Checks and balances, income and expenses, and you're going to manage it. Mm-hmm. If you get into a pinch, let me know. I'm here. We can walk through the first semester. But here's how much is coming in from mom and dad. And then if there's a gap, well, figure it out. Yeah, like, is that a job? Is that a grant? Do you need to get some scholarship money? You might need to write some letters, apply for some scholarships, fill in the gaps. My daughter's like, I want to go to Berkeley. And I'm like, out of state tuition, you know how much that is? Let's take a look at that. She's like, well, I'll get loans. I go, let's understand compounding interest. You understand compounding interest.
Yes, ma'am.
I go, let's look at a $40,000 loan for 1 year of school, compounded over 4 years. And let's look at the interest, just what, when you get out of college. We looked at that. I said, here's a great math. You want to major in business? This is a great math assignment. Okay, so just the payment when you get out of college would be about $1,000 a month. And that's no rent, no nothing.
Oh, shit.
And so she's like, okay, I've got to figure out another way. Because that's not like, I don't see how that makes, is that what you want to set up for yourself? Because I'm not co-signing on that for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to help in these ways and you're going to fill in the gap. And she like hustled and got herself a scholarship. I'm like, they're so capable, Cal.
Yeah, a lot of times we don't give them the space and the opportunity to go figure this stuff out. And again, it's good intentions, but a lot of times good intentions are driven by fear and not love. And like just like with your son, he doesn't know how to have a job. Like our responsibility is to help show them the value of money. Just because some other 16-year-old kid has a job doesn't mean my son knows anything about that. And I think a lot of times we make that mistake as we look around. Well, so-and-so's kid's driving himself down here, or he's getting an Uber and he's paying for that, and he has this job and he's making all this money. It's like, but that's him. Right. And the same thing goes with how to manage your energy and when you need to go to sleep and what to say yes or no to with substances, or whether or not you want to go this way with a career, or, like with every choice, is that they might not know how to date. Just because they like a boy or a girl doesn't mean they know how to take the first step. And this is our responsibility, is to give them space. And also when they're starting new chapters, whether it's like, okay, you're going to be in junior high, some kids might be doing this kind of thing around you now. Here's the talk about substances. Here's the talks about having crushes and sexual urges. And here's the talk about money. And here's the talk about whatever happens after this chapter. So, I learned that I just need to keep stepping back with and when I mean step back with my agenda and expectations. Yes. I need to come forward with presence and listening to how can I support my son or daughter through this next phase. And the same thing goes with a partner, to listen. What are they going through right now? If they're being grumpy, if they're dancing with some addiction, if I can feel their emotions are really waving, like instead of judging it and feeling, blaming. I've made the mistake so many times. I've made the choice. I don't know if this is a mistake or a choice, but of backing away because I'm afraid I'm the cause of it. And I may have had something to do with it, but it's a whole bunch of things that have come to the surface finally. And what I'm working on is leaning into it and being there for her and dealing with whatever part I played in it and accepting it and helping, in this example would be my wife, Peyton, get through whatever it is and to feel whatever she needs to feel. I mean, we had a conversation not too long ago. I hope this isn't sharing too much information for Peyton, but she had kind of snapped at me for something. And I just didn't feel like it was necessary. And she came back to me about 30 to 40 minutes later and apologized and said that, it just reminded me of what you used to say to me, where you basically didn't see me and you would all of a sudden bring something up that I had been doing or whatever. And you just didn't notice anything that I was doing. And so what you had said had triggered that in me. And I'm sorry that I did that. And I said, it's okay. I didn't feel like I deserved it. That version of me, I understand that's who I was. I'm not that guy anymore. I can't help who I was. It's who I was, and I accept it. And I think that's really just that acceptance alone has allowed me to move forward. But she still, we had this marriage ceremony down in Mexico, and it was beautiful. And one of the things that we said to one another was that we had forgiven one another for basically all that had happened up till then.
Yeah.
And we were starting fresh and honoring the shadow. And I said, listen, I know that we made that commitment a year and a half ago. And in you snapping at me because of this old thing is on paper, you not honoring what we said, but clearly you have more processing to do. So it's okay.
It's okay.
So she was feeling really badly about snapping because she does see the changes in me and she knows that it's not me, but it's still a trigger for her. And I just, again, if anyone's going through this, my suggestion is to just hold that partner in love. And I went back out to her when she was kind of sitting outside and was upset. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. You need to work through this. You can't just want to be through it. Like I've been given the space. You still need more time. It's okay.
And this is the humble masculine, when you said being accountable for the way you have been, that has, and same with her, to be accountable for the way that she has been, because that gives us the space to step forward and acknowledge, I have eroded your trust in when I wasn't paying attention, when I wasn't honoring you, when I wasn't listening to you, when I was making it all about me, when I was taking your thing personally, like all of those things that I'm still human and I'm still working through, even if we can, we can throw white petals in, and say that that's all done when there has been some trust eroded, even as parents, when we've raised our voice or raised a hand, or when we've come from that triggered place of our parenting and kind of squashed our kids emotionally, energetically, whatever. We also get to be accountable for that as well, and get to be accountable for the parts of us that have from our unconsciousness, from our ignorance, from our arrogance, from our pain, from our immaturity, whatever it is that caused harm in another or oppression in another. We get to keep practicing humbly being accountable and learning, instead of just saying, sorry, we forgive. It's like the real shit hits the road, like the real thing happened, the real shift happens when it's like, and what will I do differently in that same situation? How can I honor my spouse when they're triggered or when they're snapping? Or how can I honor my child when they make a decision that I don't agree with, that's really irking me right now? How can I respond differently in a way that doesn't squash them? How can I see that their behavior is a clue to me that something deeper is under the surface, instead of reacting, looking through a little teeny straw saying, okay, you're being a bitch or you're being a jerk, and that's what's true and it's hurting me. How can I be the bigger person and look at the clue that their behavior is giving me, that's saying something else is under the surface that wants to be expressed, that wants to be healed, that wants to be seen, that wants to be acknowledged? And where can my energy in this moment, depending on my level of awareness, be medicine or a poison that will either create safety and connection between us, or distance and erode the trust that has already been eroded? How can we rebuild that? And there's been a lot of opportunities in our relationships where there's been erosion of trust, whether that's infidelity, or you hurt me with your words, or I don't feel seen, or you made fun of me, or like all of the ways in which our unconsciousness has harmed our very dear loved one. We're learning this process of being accountable and forgiving ourselves. And also the same with our partner is to forgive and understand like what is going on underneath there, so that I'm not causing more harm, and I learn how to love you in a way that doesn't squash you.
Yeah. And I think, again, I can only speak from my own experience, but I have read a lot that this works for other people as well. So, but I think in a lot of cases, we bypass the the old version of us, the shadow side, and for some reason we believe we can outrun it, or we can numb it, or we can do something where we don't just fully look at it, accept it, and accept that version of ourselves, and really partner with it as a means, as you said, to go forward and do it differently. And it's like the more we deny it and we're in resistance, that shit continues to come up and it plagues us. But if we can just say, you know what? The way I acted 5 years ago, it's hard to look at, but I need to look at it. I need to acknowledge that, because that was me.
And
that wasn't anyone else.
For sure. We got to be accountable for that. And the thing is that way has been working longer in the field than, okay, now I learned this new thing from a book, or I've learned this new concept from a workshop, and it's been working my field for all of 6 weeks or 6 minutes, and I'm awakened now.
Yeah.
And yet the old way of reacting, of blaming, of shutting down, of sedating, has been in there for a little longer. And we know this about our brain, that those neural networks that have been in there longer and socially reinforced, which we were talking about earlier, are going to be the default. And so it's going to take a little, back to patience, to navigate and migrate over to this new paradigm way, being more the default, not 100%, but we're making this journey from 90-10 to like 70-30. Okay. 50-50. Okay. I'm getting better, but
You're always going to have that piece of the 90, whatever it goes down to. You're going to have it.
It's going to be there. And that's it. That's where the compassion side of the feminine that says, the acceptance of my deepest shadow, that even still rears its head, even if 90% or 97% of the time, or whatever it is, that I'm able to do this, that this still shows up. And I did an article. I was working on this workshop called Cultivating Your Inner Light years ago. And I was just focusing on the part that is, how do I shine more? How do I expand my light? And this magazine called me and said, hey, we've heard great things about your workshop. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. And they said, would you write an article? And I said, oh yeah, sure. And they said, well, it was November when they were calling me. It's for the winter issue, which is about the shadow. And I'm like, crickets, total silence. I'm like, oh, yeah, can you call me in the spring?
Love it. Like, a nice workaround.
It's not my jam. Total bypass.
Yeah.
And I hang up and I'm like, oh shit. Call him back. Yeah, I'll write the article, because what I needed to see at that time, what I was just focusing on, let me add in more light, add in more light, add in more light.
Which is beautiful. That's
great. Part of the equation.
Coming from such a good place. There's love.
But what I was totally avoiding was all of the things that sabotage, block, and totally override the light in a given moment. Dragon Lady Biatch can present herself if I'm not really honoring, where am I out of integrity? Where am I not being honest with myself? Where am I still angry? Where am I sedating, blaming? And where am I not turning towards my shadow to really look at what it's trying to get my attention to turn a light on? And the article that I wrote is called My Shadow is My Friend. And it got me the opportunity to...
We will link to that in the show notes.
Totally.
That would be amazing, yes.
I will totally do that, because it got me to really look at, when my shadow shows up, which I affectionately call Dragon Lady Biatch, when she shows up, it's because there's something out of balance or something that needs my attention that I've been ignoring. Maybe I've been putting too much pressure on time instead of presence. Maybe I've been prioritizing money over someone's feelings. Maybe I've been pushing rather than allowing, and I got to look at like just a handful of really easy pickings of how often the shadow would come up. And if I looked a little deeper, I would say, oh, I put everybody else's needs instead of mine. So exhaustion is what preceded Dragon Lady Biatch from raising her ugly head and incinerating everybody. Just the sleep move.
Yeah.
Like, and if I don't lean into that, then I don't make the change. And I can say, "Oh, I'm sorry for getting upset at you kids." But if I don't look into, I need to prioritize sleep. The next day, Dragon Lady Biatch is parenting again.
Yes.
And it's scaring the shit out of the kids. And unless I lean into, why am I so angry? Why am I so upset? Why am I triggered? Then I can't make the change. And I'm going to keep eroding the trust in my primary relationships. I'm going to keep pushing everybody away because I'm not making any changes and I'm just giving lip service to, "Oh, sorry," or "I'll be better," but I haven't actually done the work to look at what is underneath the shadow that is trying to shine a light on so that I can make the change and evolve.
Yeah. Well, and and just to your point, how this thing does not happen overnight, 6 minutes, 6 weeks, whatever. Just my own experience, I felt like I had a bit of an awakening 2.5 years ago. And it's been 2.5 years of consciously trying to, create more of this shift from 90-10 to hopefully 10-90. And I'm in process, and I've certainly flipped over, I believe, to the on the good side of the 50-50, but it takes time.
And sometimes you'll be triggered into the other thing.
Yes.
And when you get over that, you get to look, how did I get here? What did I trip over? Instead of blaming somebody for triggering you.
It's back to your point of being the witness of your own, how you're moving through the world. And I think when you're unconscious, hand up for so many years.
Often, and in lots of different situations, I can go unconscious pretty quickly.
Yes.
Like every day. You just put me into traffic and here she is. Dragon Lady Biatch is going to be behind the wheel. And
that is a place of resistance for me as well. And I recognize that. It's like, that's some of my work to do.
Totally.
By the way, when you were talking about your shadow's name, I know mine's Carl, because that's what Peyton used to call the shitty version of me. So
Carl.
I'm guessing it's Carl.
Okay, on.
But anyway, so I know we're running up on the time here. One thing I did want to, actually there are two things I want to hit. Okay. I want to get to our deck. Let's finish with the deck.
Okay.
And then I want to talk, because one of the main reasons for doing this podcast is I want to reintroduce the importance of tribe and brotherhood and sisterhood.
Yeah.
Because I think there are so many people, myself included at a certain point, that forgot that we need tribe and what it means to show up in your tribe, what it means to have people who show up for you, and what to, have some expectations. And, along those lines, I've been very fortunate to be part of an Austin tribe that goes to Sedona and brings in some other brothers. And they're some of the most masculine men, beefy,
muscular, tatted.
And if you've seen it, I've posted a few pictures in the past. If you've seen the group, I'm by far the smallest. And so anyway, these are, but I think the beauty, there's so much beauty, but we go there and we do a lot of work together.
Yeah.
And these are men who embrace one another in a way that throws, casts aside these notions that I think, unfortunately, we're all brought up in, that it's gay, homophobic if I hug another man. And I'm not talking about a bro hug. I'm not talking about a frickin' fist bump. I'm talking about an embrace where it's
heart to heart.
Heart to heart. It's 10 plus seconds. It's feeling the other person breathing. Like, these men who are massive and are soft as can be when you hug them. So don't tell me that because you work out, you can't hug. We've got some stuff to work through there. But I want to pose a challenge to people out there, or at least create an awareness about who you're surrounding yourself with, and see if how they're serving you and how you're serving them. And so I would love, I guess that's my intro to when you see this group of men, this merry band of men show up in Sedona, and you come by and do breath work with us, and we're able to really ground into the feminine essence of you, and Ashley Parangi's wife is there. And so we're held, but what's it like for you when you see this cast of characters who start crying and do all the things?
Pirates show. To speak to your thing around tribe, I think as we awaken, we will, and we move out of the community. Let's separate community.
Yeah, we'll get really clear on the terms here.
Okay, so community is maybe people I was raised with and maybe I went to high school with or whatever. And so I know them. We have things in common. We went to the same high school, or we maybe went to the same college or whatever. And this is our community. And as we grow, is not necessarily our tribe. Our tribe is really those people that want us to be authentic and bring our individuality. In the community, as we look at, this is the religious community is be like, you need to conform to this religion. If it's the financial community, you need to make this much money. If it is this ethnic community, you can only marry within this ethnicity. And so the community has a commonality that invites sameness, that does not honor individuality. In fact, it oppresses it. And so we were raised in a lot of community structures, and that sometimes oppressed our individuality. So if I'm a young gay man, and my community says that if you're gay, you're going to hell, then my community actually isn't my tribe. In that situation, that doesn't allow me to be who I am or express who I am. And so I just want to separate that out, that who we were raised with, some of the people in our community can also be our tribe, where they see us, they celebrate us, our diversity, and they want us to shine. They want us to be individuals. They're not threatened by our differentness. They're excited by it. They're impressed by it. And so as we grow and evolve and come back home to who we are after bartering so much of us to fit in, and we come back and reclaim the parts of who we are, evolving out of your community and finding your tribe is really important. And it doesn't mean we step away from family and friends, that we ignore them, we never talk to them again, but we also realize that it's not where our medicine is coming from.
Yeah.
We may turn around and lead that community in some ways to say, hey, there's another way, or I'm off doing this thing. We may give permission to shake off the norm and move into the unknown. And you might just be, those might be the ones that are throwing the biggest daggers as you move into places or choose lifestyle or a path that is not accepted by the community. So I want to just delineate a little bit about community versus tribe. And it's important for us to be a part of the community so that we can bring our magic back to it, and contribute our individuality to it.
And I think you would say that tribe would also be called a brotherhood or a sisterhood, or
within that, like-minded souls that actually see you and want you to shine. They're not so when we look at it's important as we come to find our tribe that we find, for men, it's important that you find your brotherhood. So within the tribe, it's important to find your gender tribe.
Okay.
So for men, that you find the brotherhood. Doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight. If that's your gender, is to be able to help support each other through what it is to be an awakened man, and that you're supporting each other to soften, to heal, to step into your power, to face your fears in ways that are a new toolkit that isn't necessarily the one you were raised with, force, push, competition, and all of those things. And it doesn't mean you aren't still wanting the best and moving forward with courage, but learning how to use new tools of the spiritual warrior. Mm-hmm. And that you can be sensitive, that you can hug, that you can cry, that you can be tender, and that you're not ridiculed and bullied because the community might have done that.
Yeah.
And the community might have been the one that says, hey, you wuss, cut that out, be a man, and actually been a part of oppressing your sensitivity. And and oppressing your creativity. If you're like, wow, I just really feel drawn to be an artist or do this, it's like, no, that's for pussies, And so,
and I think I'm glad you're kind of really going down this rabbit hole, because it's very nuanced. Community, tribe, and all the things that you're describing, whether it's with these brothers in Sedona or the brothers I have from Chicago and these different tribes, this is the essence. Everyone's individuality is honored and blessed and encouraged, and it's made the whole tribe. It's like it's no longer the sum of its parts. It's like we're just elevated,
right, and very diverse. If we look at this group, and I had the blessing of seeing how these beautiful men, and you know what, I have that picture where you guys are all holding me up, and there's all these beautiful men and 6'2", 250 pounds, solid rock, ex-pro athletes, and entrepreneurs, you name it, fathers, gay, straight, like all of it. It's all right there in just 8 men, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And what I really celebrate about this brotherhood is that you're celebrating diversity. And you're allowing, we don't all have to see things the same. We don't always have to make the same choices. But what a brotherhood would provide is space, acceptance, these feminine qualities, allowing, inspiration, nurturing, healing. That's really those qualities that also allow the best version of you to then step into a masculine that fits you. I really want to advocate for core healing, or I really want to bring this product out to the market. I really want to, and Aubrey's center part, with holding this tribe together, and it's just like being a voice for conscious leadership, whether it's with a podcast, whether it's with a product, whether it's as a parent. And there's in that group, there's different relationships, preferences. There's how to do healing. There's all kinds of different, totally diverse.
And I love and I just. Parangi's, the podcast that we did together is coming out in a week from now. But, I was just sitting back and thinking, as I was recording the intro for that, he and I would have never crossed paths, like, had it not been for, me meeting Kyle and then into Aubrey. And I mean, he's someone that I've, probably learned the most from, or just the way he lives his life and his alignment and his truth. And he and I are not similar avatars, at all.
Totally different paths.
And it's a great lesson, because I spent a lot of my life around people who looked like me, came from the same backgrounds, went to the same types of schools, in the same occupations. Yeah. All of those things. And a lot of that is based in fear. I understand that. Like, if you didn't look like me, or you I don't.
Not them.
I wasn't okay with me.
The thing is, this is what's beautiful, is that now when we have tribe like that is diverse, but having a commonality of awakening, making a difference, being of service, being the best man I can be, that we get to learn from each other, and we're stronger together. In our diversity, we get to see, wow, look at how he is with his music. Look at how he is as a parent. Look at how he is with his business. And instead of like, whose dick's bigger,
Yeah.
And the old paradigm with the bros is competition and insecurity, and it's dog eat dog. And the new paradigm around the brotherhood is, how can we inspire each other's greatness, and together we rise collectively? And the same thing is happening over in the silo of the sisters, as we're learning how to find our voice again, and look where we have given away our femininity to be too much in the masculine, where we've taken care of everybody else at the expense of self, and where the old paradigm for sisters is backstabbing, hair pulling, cheating, gossip, insecurity because we were threatened by how skinny she was or how pretty she was, or she's got the guy I want. And so here comes this insecurity where we're undermining each other rather than lifting each other up. And this is where, I have a podcast with Christy Woods about sisterhood and how when we heal our own insecurities around our other sisters, just as men are healing their own insecurities about, wait, whose pecs are bigger and whose bank account is bigger and who's got the girl and like all of that stuff. And we drop the competition and we bring our own light forward and we kind of stand in our own truth, know that I deserve to be at this circle. And my medicine and my individuality doesn't need me to be like his or like hers. When we step into our power and we own that, now we can bring that into the circle. And as women, we're healing the parts of us that have been so triggered by our insecurities. And we're like learning to respect our own bodies and this is the shape I am and this is the magic I have. I don't need to be like that sister, but I do respect her.
Yes.
I do respect her medicine. I do respect what a wonderful mom she is or what a fabulous writer or speaker. And we're not threatened by their success. We actually are confident enough in our own selves that we're learning how to like be the wind beneath another sister, where we can take off the masks and we don't have to have all our shit together. No. We can be a hot mess and there isn't the fear of criticism and that this kind of private, secret that I'm sharing is not going to be on Instagram in 5 minutes, yes. That there is safety, whether it's in a brotherhood circle, that there is safety in a sisterhood circle that is like, I am safe to talk about this addiction or this body image fear or this eating disorder or this heartbreak or this relationship challenge, and it's not going to be used against me. And my sisters want the best for me. They're not trying to steal my man or my job or like they undermine me in some way. They actually want me to be on bigger stages. They want me to succeed. We rise together, and this is the new paradigm. And so that's why I lead women's retreats and women's circles and things like that, because we're learning how to stand side by side, and we rise together this way. Then when we start to bring the awakened men and the awakened women together, and we're not trying to force or manipulate or, get validation from each other, we actually see the men and how beautiful they are, and the men see and the respect, the intuition and the gifts and the femininity that are bringing. Then the men don't have to squash the femininity, and the women can be powerful and also gentle. And this is where the new paradigm really gets juicy, is when awakened men and awakened women are actually co-creating, whether that's in partnership or, as parents, or whether it's like, hey, let's collaborate the new paradigm together. And that to me is where it just gets really juicy, is now we're talking about the soul tribe that is part of, okay, how can we take and leverage this gift or this skill or this resource or this person that with this, what I've got and what you have. And now we're starting to collaborate and accelerate at such a high level of integrity and consciousness and cooperation, where there isn't insecurity anymore, there isn't competition anymore. We just want to rise together. And there's this reciprocity and a respect that collaboration can take it to the next level, which is where the new paradigm is created, is when the awakened masculine and the awakened feminine within each of us and within each genders, now we start to lead from that place, and it just gets really juicy. That's how we're going to write the new story here.
Yeah, and I can feel that, certainly from my own experience. And it's funny, I was thinking about, it's March 2nd right now that we're recording, and in a month, we're doing another trip out there with the guys, and so it'll be my third one. And I'm especially looking forward to this one, because what I recognized in the last two trips is that I was still in a place of trying to feel like I needed to fit in.
Yeah.
And so really kind of, stepping back and not, giving a full expression of myself and really wanting to be liked and do all the right things. And this is you at this age. And this is where we get to learn from your son, where it's like,
he's not trying to fit in.
Yeah. And it's
Isn't
like,
that
I finally kind of, it's been a month or however long it's been, but I had this kind of almost spontaneous, new awakening. And it's like, I'm fucking who I am. And I like, so I'm really excited to share this fucking new version of myself with the
Right?
tribe. And it's like, this is who they want. They accepted the other guy because he was still working through his shit. And so
Which
it
we
was
all
all
are.
good. And so I'm excited to bring this new version who's, kind of stepping into, as you said, stepping into my own power and not feeling like I need to show up in any other way than just as Cal.
Authentic. Yeah. And that might be, I'm going through a contraction. I got a dear, dear sister that is in like my sisterhood, and like, wow, like she's just going through her journey and like a big breakup. And then it's a big self-discovery again. And I'm finding who I am, and I'm still cocooning. And now I'm coming out, remembering who I am. And I'm writing, and my voice is coming out again. And during the process, how I can show up for that is not expect her to have to rush through that at all. To let her to be the hot mess, but also, hey, remember who you are, sister. Like, let me reflect that you have magic inside you. And sometimes we forget when we're going through our journeys of the awakening process, we forget. And so it's the responsibility of the brotherhood, and it's the responsibility of the sisterhood to be like, yo, stop hiding over there. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I want to be very clear here. It wasn't as if I was sitting in the corner the entire
Not
time.
at all.
But I know what I felt like deep down is like, okay, like I love these guys. I love being in their presence. I'm learning a lot. These are men who are showing me how to combine the masculine and the feminine. And so, yeah, just that old kind of programming of like, you're just like, I just don't want to fuck this up because it's a cool experience. But I'm there has been a shift, and I'm excited about that. So anyway, thank you for that.
I'll see you soon.
Well, let's close with our Earth Warriors Oracle deck.
Love it.
And I'll probably actually clip this off and do it as a an additional little clip that we'll put off on social media as well. So this will be part of the podcast, but I want to make sure that I want you to kind of explain the whole deal here.
So one of the things, when I was starting my journey of awakening way back, however many minutes ago, years, decades, whatever it is that I had been disconnected to the part of me that received guidance. It had been completely closed off, whether it was from social programming or a lack of use or the calcification of those, pineal and the pituitary glands, which are responsible for higher knowledge.
I'm behind you with this.
Okay, cool.
You can just sit right
Okay. So, I had become disconnected from the ability to hear intuitive guidance and spirit guidance. And one of the things that helped me reestablish that was just every once in a while, I'd say, you know what? I'm going to pick up this deck and just ask the question to this deck, any deck.
This deck right here. This is a deck.
This is a deck. And this one in particular that Cal has is this Earth Warriors Oracle. It's really nice. I haven't even seen this one before.
It's been
spot on.
Amazing. Yes.
Amazing. And, if you're wanting to have a deck of some kind to kind of help you, if there's a question you're working through, or if there's an issue you're having trouble with getting perspective or insight on, I highly recommend just grab it, go into one of those shops that has tons of different decks and trust your intuition to pick the deck that feels right for you. Just pick that deck.
And I'm going to give away this deck. Okay, we're going to do a little giveaway. I don't know exactly how it looks, but it's like, why wouldn't I? We'll figure out what that process looks like. Yeah. But my favorite deck, someone will be the recipient of
this
that
deck. Yes. And so then we just be with an open mind that says, okay, whatever you call it, God, creator, source, higher self, soul, spirit, you insert whatever that terminology is for you. And I kind of leave an open-ended question. What do I need to hear?
Yeah.
Like, hey, what message do I need to hear today? Sometimes it's give me some guidance on a particular issue or a topic that I'm struggling with. And, and sometimes it's just like, hey, I leave it up to you. Like, what do I need to hear? And the feminine, humble opening, what message would help me today? And then we just let it land. So what do we have today? Which card did you pick?
And by the way, if you think this is kooky,
it
absolutely.
It totally
First of all, it is.
Yeah.
And if you're not called to this,
that's cool. You can opt out.
I
right
wouldn't
now.
have been
That's
called
totally
to this.
Well, I used to
4
make
years
fun
ago.
of all of this, of course, and make fun of psychics and all of this stuff. And I used to live and work in New York City with a Bob in like a big six, consulting firm. So
I love it.
Right. And so, of course, I used to make fun of all this shit as well. And then I started seeing the synchronicities and I started receiving divine guidance and then trusting it and realizing, whoa, that was really helpful. And just as we experienced in the healing session, right in the healing session, I asked this question.
Yeah, share what happened. It was.
Well, what were you feeling? Like you were feeling this, this opening was happening at the end of our shamanic healing journey. This opening was happening. And the question I asked was, what words describe this or what messages are coming through?
Yeah, what do I need to hear? And I said, surrender, let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And then?
At that time, I have tons and tons of different songs or music that I might play during a healing session. And this one particular soundtrack, I intuitive, because I listen now. I stopped saying shut up or I doubt you. Anugama, this shamanic dream.
Who I heard this particular, because it's a long, so how long is
song. But the whole session was that first song. Then with this, we're in this part of the session, in the separate part of the section, the second song came on, which has some words to it. The other one doesn't have any words.
And the first song I had heard on a Pandora station. I forget, it may have been Porangi's Pandora station. I couldn't get it on Spotify, so I bought it on iTunes. I'm like, I love this song.
And I picked it today because intuition speaks. Like I finally, when I did all my healing, all of my clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience.
I'm going to link to it in the show notes because it's that good, both of them.
Anugama. So what happens is as soon as you said, let it go, that's exactly when the song says, let it go.
And I had no idea it had words in it because it's so subtle.
And it hadn't even said it yet.
You see?
Like you said, let it go. And then the song says, let it go. And I'm just like, oh, this is how intuition works. So when we have enough of these synchronicities, we start to break the patterns of disbelief. And we're like, all right, it's finally real. And I've had enough of these working with nature and animal spirit guides that come in and things that happen in a session and clairvoyant images that I'm getting that I years ago just stopped denying that there's this whole other realm of possibilities where we can see, feel, hear, and know things if we allow it in. And sometimes just picking a card at just the right time, it just lands the medicine that we need to hear.
And there have been a few that I've picked recently that I read one that I was reading the first paragraph and I literally started crying. Like it was so true to what I was experiencing and what I needed to hear. The little nudge, like you're on the right path, brother. Just keep going.
Right.
It's like, holy shit.
Right. Or you're facing a fear or, trust or whatever it is, or it's time to express yourself. You're like, what have you not been saying that you need to say? And you're like, oh, damn. Can I pick a different card?
Okay. So the illustrator here is it Alana or Alana Fairchild?
Yep.
And she does a ton. Her illustrations are amazing. So I'm going to show you this one. It's
here, I'll hold
Petra
it up.
Carmack. Is that how you pronounce that? Can you kind of show it to the camera?
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
Ooh, nice.
Maybe give it a little closer. Here you go.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. Nourishment of the soul. You are granted the gifts of fertility, creativity, and earthly abundance to support all needs. By the way, I've been getting a ton of feminine cards lately.
Hi.
Wow.
It's the time for the feminine to awaken. It's the time for all of us.
Well, it's the continued reminder that that's the piece that
Is
I
coming
still
home
need to-
again.
Yeah. Okay. To support all needs for nourishing body, mind, and soul, and to live your life fully and be capable of manifesting your divine purpose. Give yourself permission to be nourished. I just told you this before. It's like
Right.
one of my struggles is to allow my wife, Peyton, or even my mother, just to nurture, to be in that role.
And self. This
is-
is big because so many listening and watching are like navigating some form of adrenal fatigue.
fact. This includes your body and also providing your heart, your mind, your soul with what they are hungry for. Meaning, sweetness, divine love, and permission to be authentic. When you feed yourself that which truly nourishes you, wisely and generously, you shall become one who can also feed the world that for which it truly hungers. Now, this is such a great example too. Like we can't, and I know we've all heard this and it's cliche, you got to fill your cup, but I finally believe it because as I've fixed or continued to work on my own personal growth and fixing me, I'm able to give way more than, and I don't have to think about it. It's just there now. It's before it was up in the head. And it's like, oh, I have to do this because that's what a good dad does. And that's what a good husband does. That's what a good friend does. And showing up in these ways that weren't like, they're truly authentic in what was needed at the time. And so as I've gone into who I am and really accepted all the ways that I am, I'm able to just move through the world and I just give in the way that is needed now. I don't think about it.
It's easier.
It's just there.
When our cup is full, then we're not we're less reactive. We're able to hold space and more present so that when somebody's melting down, if the cup is empty and we're tired and we're cranky, then we're a lot more inclined to be reactive rather than how can I stay in my presence and be medicine for this experience? Because if my cup is empty and you're having that experience, I'm triggered. Now I'm making it worse. So it's not just, it's also about when I don't fill my cup up, I'm more destructive.
Oh, you're the one who's drowning and you pull the rescue guy down with you.
Yeah, and you're blaming somebody else. Yeah. And then when we add, the Molotov cocktail of any substance on top of that, we're going to pick fights. And we're going to create a destructive energy because not taking care of self is in fact destructive. Yes. And I still working through this like over and over.
It's always self-care, works in progress, folks. We all are. Let's just accept that.
Yeah,
I finally accepted that. There's no. I'm not completing any of this. This puzzle, and that was like a metaphor I thought about. Can I be okay with this puzzle of me, whether it's the whole me or versions like sections of me, whether it's fitness or whatever, can I be okay with that puzzle being incomplete? It's sitting on my table and there are 5 or 10 or 80 pieces of this 100-piece puzzle not done. Can I sit with that? Can I be okay with that?
And some of the pieces aren't there yet. I'm not going to get them to complete the puzzle until years from now, or maybe in another life or whatever. Like, and I love the puzzle metaphor because my mom loves to do that. And during the holidays, I'm like, okay, let's do. She wants to do a
finish them. We have to finish them.
And you pick up a piece and you think it fits because the color and the thing, and you're just like, it'll fit. You're like, let me just cut off this. Yeah, it'll fit now. And sometimes we're not ready for the piece yet. It's flipped over. It's on the ground. We can't find it. We can't see it because we're not ready for it. And we get to just be in that place. And I love the card that you picked for us today. And this is, nourishment for the soul, because we might be focused on nourishment for the ego because I'm doing this and it makes me feel accomplished. Okay, that's part of it. But what also nourishes the body, and what at a deep level makes me feel happy and complete and alive. and we get so busy in the doing and the checklist that we forget to check into the deep soul nourishment. So thank you for pulling that card.
Yes.
That's delicious for me as well.
Yay.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so in wrapping, when we're gonna link to all this in the show notes, but just I would love for you to kind of what are your offerings for everyone, and we'll link to your website, podcast, everything in the show notes.
Thank you. Well, Shamangelic Healing, that's my website in Sedona. And that is really going to meet you wherever you are on your journey. Mm-hmm. And so the Shamangelic Healing podcast is there. On Instagram, it's Anahata Ananda. So there's all kinds of inspiration and clips and wonderful things there that are all free. So go follow there for sure. Mm-hmm. And, if you feel like you're working through and navigating a life change, well, then, just come and visit me in Sedona, or there's online. If you can't, I have a lot of clients that are all around the world, and they're there. Then they're in my online high performance coaching program that is online, and it's groups, so that you can get some, time with me, and we do group calls and things like that. But you can also get videos and assignments each month that are self-directed that we're all doing together, and we share in groups. And so if that's a better fit for you, then super. If you want to come to one of the events that we have, there's the Empowerment and Awakening Weekend, there's women's retreats, and there's different training of different types of people that are wanting to learn more healing modalities. And this is really just about personal empowerment and where you can take yourself to the next level. And I'm here. I want to acknowledge that if you're still listening, that there's some work for us to do. If you've stayed tuned for this long and you were hanging on to the cards, or it's helping you, whether you're a parent or whether you're navigating some part of your journey, I just want to acknowledge that if you have listened this long, we're destined to cross paths in some way at some time. And I look forward to meeting you.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, and she comes through Austin a couple times a year. Yeah. So keep an eye on when she's on the road, and reach out to me. Either DM me, hit me up at cal@thegreatunlearn.com or wherever if you want personal, like my personal experience. I've obviously shared it here, but I can go more in depth. I'm happy to. We've done some amazing work together, and I'm super grateful for that. And I think that's a wrap.
We'll give a free gift. We'll give a gift. We'll give that link to that light and dark energies.
Perfect.
That we'll give a free gift, that link to that.
So look out for that, folks.
Yeah, definitely. That is My Shadow is My Friend, and like how to walk that journey. So I just want to acknowledge you, Cal, for everything that you've done, what you've walked out of and through, and what you're stepping into. And it's so beautiful to watch this transformation, and now leading in whole new ways as an amazing father, husband, and now voice for the community and for the tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. And part of my work is to just receive that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Right?
Appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Keep going, brother.
Love you, soul sister.
I love you too. So good.